Hi, everybody. This is Candace Marie with Astrology.com, and I'm coming to hang out with you guys today, kind of doing a little bit of a spur of the moment live broadcast. And I just wanted to have a little bit of a chat about what everybody else is talking about, the inauguration. Talking about the new presidency, what's going to be happening. I find what's really interesting is some of the events that are actually taking place, not only that day, but also how it's correlating with Trump's chart, and what we can expect from his term based off of what we're seeing that day. So a lot of people are already starting to make their predictions. I know that I have my own formed opinions. I just want to say this. The chart in itself is quite literally, it's like a consciousness. So we don't really know exactly what's going to happen until he takes his oath. So everything that I'm basing off of is Washington, D.C. It's going to be the 20th. It's going to be about 12 noon. So until the moment he takes that oath, we don't know the exact chart. Now, obviously, the outer planets aren't going to move. They're going to stay the same. So this will be fairly accurate, or it should be fairly accurate. But more of what I'm kind of raising is just the themes in the astrology and what we can expect based off the astrology. I'm not here to discuss politics. I didn't vote. That's just my stand on this. That's my choice. But I do live in the States. I think it's very important that we look at this because it's going to give us some key insights as to what we can be expecting. And I know that everybody else is watching. I mean, we've got people from all over the world. So we're just going to have a conversation. We're just going to kind of shoot it together today. But I'm going to start actually talking a little bit about Trump's chart, because I think that that's going to give us some key insights as to why he won, why he's here, why this is such a pivotal moment for him personally, and how it's actually kind of correlating with the inauguration themes that I'm going to be seeing that we'll talk about in just a little bit. But I mean, there's some major Saturn transits going on for him right now, which is the big thing that I'm actually taking a look at. Currently looking at his chart, he's a 29-degree Leo. He's got his sun within a 2-degree orb conjunct his north node, and also hanging out with Uranus in Gemini in the 10th house. Of course, I mean, look at what he's doing. He's very much embodies that energy out in the media. But opposing that would be his south node in the 4th of Sagittarius within a 1-degree conjunction of his natal moon. So everybody who's been watching Saturn or taking a look at some of the trends right now knows that Saturn is at 23 degrees. It looks like, I've got some notes here, excuse me, we're going to be having we'll begin our Saturn retrograde April 6, 2017 in the early morning hours. I think that, Saturn's close enough right now, but as it goes retrograde, it's certainly going to speak about how he is doing emotionally, how his mental emotional health will be. The 4th house is very comfortable with having the moon, but I also feel that this is talking about a lot of him hiding and pulling back and doing business and making emotional decisions within his home, within the White House. And this will apply to the chart, and it'll make a little bit more sense when I get into the inauguration. But I think that just seeing that transit alone tells me we're going to see a great deal of him emotionally going through some trials. I think that a lot of people look at Saturn opposing your sun and see it as a very difficult position. I think because it's in Sagittarius, you're going to see such a major highlight, and we've already seen it with his beliefs and his views and some of the outrageous things that he's been saying about, our foreign policy, about his views on how we're dealing with immigration. And that's going to weigh so heavy on his public image. I don't think anybody really understands. That's such a huge thing. And it's not just immigration. It's how we're dealing with, gender equality, how we're dealing with his views on same-sex marriage, how he's handling and publicly speaking about his views on racial issues in America is going to play such a key role on how he is seen. Now, Saturn opposing your sun can be rewarding. Remember, it's conjunct his north node. So I do believe that regardless of where he would have ended up being, regardless of what country he lived in or what have you, the astrological transits would have provided him for the opportunity to openly have these topics in a public forum in front of a lot of people. And I think that this is something that unfortunately has to play out. But it's also going to be a major driving factor for how long I think he stays in office and how long he is going to be actually being seen. I'm just gonna say that. Coincidentally, you know, right now we've got the transiting North Node that is approaching his natal 29-degree ascendant. We've got a lot of other planets that are also right now transiting from his 5th house, getting ready to just make its way to his 6th house. So he is looking to reorganize. He is looking to, you know, get work together and bring things together and be able to kind of reevaluate and reorganize things in a very Aquarian way, which reflects in the inauguration chart that I'll get into in just a moment. That's pretty much a lot of what I'm seeing. I mean, we're seeing that his natal Neptune, his natal Saturn and Venus is conjunct in Cancer, and that's in his 11th house. And so, I mean, that screams narcissist. That's just me. But seeing that, you know, Pluto will soon be squaring based off of the retrograde, but, you know, Jupiter in Libra is going to be squaring that. Right now, transiting Uranus in Aries is also squaring that. So it's a great deal of pressure with his Jupiter, you know, along the 2nd house. Actually, it's more so in the 3rd right now, but about his personal value, and the personal value that he has is going to be based off of the relationships that he makes. Now that's under pressure with Pluto. That's certainly not too close to the transiting sun right now, but certainly getting closer to his vertex point, which I think that the 5th house and Capricorn being there can be talking about some of the things that happen in his life, or some of the drama that ends up coming up in his life about his business in politics, about his business in government. And it's certainly getting to a little bit of a tipping point where there are going to be some things that are destined to happen. Now, a lot of you guys who are watching this, or who will be watching this, I think part of the reason why is because you guys had seen the video that I did talking about some of the 2017 predictions, and then I was also talking about what may be happening with the presidency. And we skipped a little bit ahead, and I just kind of was like, well, he could be assassinated. Everything is just open for discussion. I'm not saying whether he will or he won't, but this is kind of the prequel to what I was getting at, is everything that leads up to this. He's got that 29-degree Leo ascendant. We know that in the oncoming months in the summertime, we are going to be having a solar eclipse, August 21st at 28 degrees and a couple seconds Leo. Hi, hello. I mean, obviously something major is coming. And I've heard a lot of really interesting perspectives from other astrologers and for other people and other skeptics even. And a lot of people, including a good friend of mine, has more or less suggested that this could result in an assassination. Now, there's a couple different astrological, I think, paths that this could take, and we'll talk about those. But I'm especially kind of interested in the fact that his natal Mars sits at 26 degrees Leo in his 12th house, can be indicative of potentially an attack, something that could happen with that eclipse or with that transit, especially how it will be interacting with other particular planets at that time. So we'll get into that. But enough with his chart. I mean, there's nothing entirely too interesting, in my opinion, that's really going on other than some of those key points. And we're also seeing that, it's going to apply. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over now. I'm sorry you guys can't see this, but I'm going to switch over now to the inauguration of that day and remove his chart. And so now looking at his, with inauguration day, like I said, January 20th, 2017, and it's at 12 o'clock noon in Washington, D.C. This brings us to a 14-degree Taurus ascendant for the chart that day, and it also puts the sun at 0-degree Aquarius, right along, that midheaven, just past it by a couple degrees short. We always have the inauguration on this day. The sun is going to be in Aquarius. It's initiating change, moving into one of the 4 fixed signs, and now leading us to the beginning of the presidency. So this chart is not just about the day. The chart is actually about everything else coming together that day and allowing you to have a new consciousness. Pluto and Mercury are going to be sitting in Capricorn. Now, this is nothing new, but it's in the 9th house, which is certainly lending energy to the topics of government, changes in court structure. We've got a whole bunch of planets that are in Pisces sitting in the 11th house. Mars, Chiron, we've got Venus, we've got Neptune, all conjunct with also the South Node that's in Pisces. Uranus is in 20 degrees of the 12th house of Aries. The North Node is in Virgo in the 5th. We've got Jupiter that's at 22 degrees in Libra, and a Scorpio moon on the descendant. This is just something else. When I first started looking at it, I was like, the whole world is going to be watching. And yes, the whole world is usually watching when this happens anyway, or has something to say, but this is bringing up so many questions for me. I mean, all right. So you've got all of these people right now who I'm watching secretly on Twitter and seeing what they're saying, and people who are choosing not to be a part of the inauguration, yet everybody's eyes are going to be on it. I think people may be waiting for something to happen. I think people are waiting for something to be said. I think people are expecting things that may come out of nowhere. There's certainly going to be a lot of attention going on at this time. Sorry, old lady with my glasses on. I wrote some notes here, and it might kind of just seem like I'm talking at you, but try to bear with me. It's easier for me to get through this not being able to have the live chat. That way I can get everything out. But the sun being the president in the sign of Aquarius, it's in the 10th house, which has to do with government. Now, what I find that's interesting is when I look at Aquarius, I think about revolution. I think about changing. I think about its ruling planet being Uranus, and that is currently in the 12th house. To me, that's a pretty big theme. I'm seeing this about whatever radical change is going on in government. In the 12th house, he's wanting to do it behind closed doors. He's wanting this to take place in private, which brings me back to my point when I said his natal moon being conjunct Saturn right now in the 4th house. It's like he's going to be making some major decisions, perhaps without wanting to have a lot of people involved and wanting to do it from a place of feeling like he's not going to be attacked. Hi, guys. Recently, stuff that's been coming out in the media is talking about him wanting to, or him and his camp, potentially wanting to limit coverage by the press and the media in the White House. What? I mean, like, so you're seeing so many people who are coming up and speaking about this right now. You're seeing people like, you know, Meryl Streep. Everybody saw that Shane video where she was coming up and basically, you know, encouraging people to support the press and encouraging people to stand with the press, because the press and the media will play a huge role in what goes on in his presidency and what goes on in terms of what he ends up doing for this country. I think that's a really big point that I have to mention. Limiting stuff certainly does show that, although maybe it's because he's feeling attacked, I could see that with Saturn on his moon. He's wanting to retreat. He's feeling judged. But it's hard to be in one of the most, you know, important, one of the most prestigious jobs in the world, and want to say a bunch of stuff and then want to hide. That's not how the leader of the free world really should be acting. Getting off topic, we're going to go back. I'm looking at now the 11th house, where we have the stellium that includes Mars, Chiron, Venus, and Neptune. Couple points here. Chiron is the wounded healer. So, you know, it's possible that there could be agreements, you know, going on in this 11th house, because we're seeing that conjunct Neptune leading to illusions and things that were said that were taken out of context, maybe things that he agreed to. I see Neptune as like a dissolver too, so it could potentially be dissolving agreements or dissolving treaties or dissolving things that have already been in place with our government, or things that he said that he was going to do that he's just choosing no longer to kind of play ball with, or he's choosing not to agree to anymore. Potentially violating peace treaties or deals. That's something else that I kind of noted, you know, with some of the planetary placements. It's suggesting that there could be disruption with relations to other nations. That's kind of concerning, and we'll get into that when we get into the placement of Saturn being in Sagittarius. But to put this on pause for a second, remember, this is the consciousness of what's happening Inauguration Day. So don't blame Trump, because although he's got his hangups, this is what was already kind of going to happen. It was already in the stars, so to say. So whoever would have come into this position was coming into this energy, was having to deal with this energy regardless of who it was. This is something that's going to play out anyway. So moving on from potential disruptions with relations, and we've already kind of seen that about some of what he has said about his views on foreign policy and how he's dealing with things. What else does this mean? Well, I look at Neptune and I look at Chiron and I think about if there are tense situations going on with foreign countries, he may be looking at beefing up his security. Now, remember, he's already in a situation where he has said some things and brought some topics up in the public that may upset other countries. I could see potentially beefing up security within our country borders, within places that could potentially be a little bit more weak. I look at Neptune and I go, okay, maybe we could be building up the Navy. You might see that he's putting more money or kind of trying to beef up security to keep from situations happening along our coast or along where foreign water is meeting American waters. We don't know. That's just something that I'm noticing. Also, Mars and Chiron and Neptune in the 11th, you're going to be hearing that, from an outsider's perspective, I see this as he's going to start to see his career crumble. You're going to start to see that Neptune energy really kind of chew him up and spit him out. And you could see not only potentially his career in the public media, but also within what's going on with his role in our country completely fall apart. He could suffer serious discreditation due to the fabrication of what he has said. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the Chiron and the Neptune. And remember, all of these planets that are just hanging out in Pisces will be getting affected by Saturn. You're going to see it. Also, Venus squaring Saturn in the 8th house. That's a whole nother thing. So that can also be talking, that's the house of death, first of all. But this could be potentially leading to his term being cut short. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But as we scan ahead, I'm a big fan of eclipses, looking at how the eclipses could be suggesting that his term could be cut short, that he may not necessarily stay a full term. Should he actually make it past the inauguration? I don't know. So Venus squaring Saturn in the 8th house, cutting it short, potentially. This could have to do with, because of his very vocal issues with foreigners. And so this is the biggest thing that I saw when I looked at the chart. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? We're seeing that Saturn is talking about, lessons, the foundation, what's going on, how this is affecting the state of what's going on in the United States. Maybe even perhaps to do with issues of inequality, like I said, women's rights, racial issues, same-sex marriages, the list goes on. I'm not discrediting any one of them. We are all in this together. But we forget that Sagittarius is the activist. So if anything, the one thing I'm taking from this is how we are going to potentially see changes in government, or maybe how government is run, or whether or not he stays, will be through the unity of these people coming together to create change. These groups, all of us who feel so strongly, whether it affects us personally or not, it's being able to raise the issue of, hey, you're saying this, Saturn in the 8th house, you're saying this, we don't like this. It will directly affect his public image. It's going to directly affect and discredit some of the things that he's saying, which is why everybody has to be banding together on these issues. This goes a little bit deeper. What I'm a little bit iffy about is certainly the Mars and Chiron squares in Sagittarius in the 8th house. I'm seeing this as potential war energy, being attacked, issues resulting in death and destruction in regards to issues with foreigners. So this has to do with foreign countries and our relation with foreign countries, but also how he's handling his issues with with immigrants, and how we're dealing with immigrants, and how he's treating people, and how he's talking to people, and how he's getting some people really, really, really riled up. And I'm seeing this being potentially fatal, both in a sense of, the Trump being in office, but also with him actually being around. Okay, so this is also bringing up topics and issues in regards to conflict with religion. So, you know, Sagittarius has to do with not just foreign people, but belief systems, spirituality, religious, how we are practicing. I don't like that. Here, let's see, what did I put? This suggests that it could be a fanatical terror or religious group that could get involved. That's what I wrote here. Because of Mars and Pisces squaring Saturn in the 8th. Could also represent, you know, groups who have the ability to mobilize, who may have, you know, military backing behind them that would then attack, that would threaten, that would come out of nowhere, because it's really working off of that Mars energy. It's really working from also Pisces. And when we look to what's going on in the 12th house, we have Uranus, which could be sudden unexpected attacks. I mean, we're looking at him really upsetting a lot of people, which we already know this. We already know this, but man, is it really, really, really coming out. Let's talk about the moon on the descendant for a second. And before I was even having this video, this was kind of spur of the moment. I just wrote some notes down. But one thing that I was really thinking about just a couple minutes ago was the moon on the descendant, and it's in Scorpio. It's this deep, this transformative, this almost intuitive, and the moon does play on feminine energy. I think you're going to see a lot of very upset women. I think you're going to see a lot of very upset women. I know that we're seeing that we're having the Women's March that should be, I believe, happening on the 21st in Washington, D.C. I feel like women are going to play such a big role in this. And I think that what they say and how they handle things and how they bring up these topics and how we bring up maybe perhaps even how he has spoken to women in the past and how he has viewed women and said some really, really horrific things publicly, is actually going to end up coming around and really kind of like biting him in the behind. But the moon being on the descendant and it's in the 6th house, it is talking about his interest is being able to get everybody back to going to work. Everybody just emotionally, I know you guys are a little bit of a mess. I know everybody's worried and there's a lot of change coming, but let's just get back to work. Let's create some jobs. Okay. I think that what we're really looking at here is that might be the smoke and mirrors in a lot of those same ways that, you know, him talking about building a wall and his issues with immigrants is a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, gosh, this is like the magician card. I mean, this is a hot mess. This is him being like, let me create all of these issues over here. So that way you guys get riled up. Okay, cool, you're good. I'm going to go and do these business deals behind closed doors. So I want to remind you guys, I think it's important not to get caught up in the illusions of what he's trying to create to distract people from what may be actually going on. That was just a off the cuff type thing. But this is also talking about the state of things changing and the collective consciousness picking up on this and having to really, 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 once again, work together to create this change. But he's going to come out probably saying so much about how he's really trying to create jobs, make sure everybody's working. He wants America to get into this very kind of, you know, I'm going to change, Scorpio. I'm going to change and we're going to make America great again. And I want everybody to be working like a well-oiled machine. It'll last for a bit, but I think that it's important to stay conscious of what we're really feeling inside intuitively. What about Pluto and Mercury in the 9th house sitting in Capricorn? The matchup of that in Sagittarius natal house speaks to further changes in the courts and the legislature along with the court system. Also radically changing government, being that it's in Capricorn. And so I think that the primary focus when I look to the 9th house, it does have to do with his beliefs on what's going on with foreign policy. Once again, bringing it back to foreign policy, bringing it back to that he wants to change. And I see that Pluto and that Mercury it can be manipulative. It can be transforming how he deals with other countries. I also put here that, like, once again, changing the court systems in itself. And so it's going to be interesting to see what he does with selecting members who will be radically changing and giving their input as to how we're going to change the court systems or the Supreme Court systems. I mean, we're looking at, once everything goes in a very Republican direction, we're not going to have a lot of control. And, you know, I don't know the state of exactly what's going on with the people that he's chosen from his cabinet. I really try not to watch entirely too much unless it's just me going and doing my homework. But I know that from my perspective, and I know other people share this too, it almost looks as if a lot of the people that he's bringing in that will be sitting on his cabinet or working with him don't have a lot of experience. You're bringing in corporate people. Look at this, Pluto in the ninth house, who are going to be coming in and controlling some of these things for our country, who may know how to work a corporate country, but that doesn't, corporate company, but may not necessarily have a lot of experience in government. Makes me a little nervous. Things are certainly changing, but guys, this is nothing new. He's been saying this all along. What I see here is also the changes that may occur as a result of this. We look further into the Saturn squares with Venus and Mars in the 11th house in Pisces, which represents our society. And then it squares the moon. So it's like everybody's going to get super tense about what they see him start doing and what they see him start changing. And it's certainly going to bring up a lot of disruptions in relationships. I mean, everybody loves Jupiter in Libra. It's supposed to be a year that's more harmonious for relationships and also for financial matters in general. But I mean, I'm looking at Saturn that's opposing within a 2 degree of Uranus in the 12th. I could see that as like bad relations. I could see that as also health matters, like actual health matters that can actually be, because we're seeing it affecting Pluto. It is the ninth house. It is talking about not a healthy state of government or a healthy state of how we are governing also the states. I mean, this is not just our courts, but these are police officers. This is where we need the social justice the most, where we need people to be the most honest. It's not looking so good. I don't feel like he's going to necessarily be doing what he needs to do to be ensuring that our immigrants, that every person, every nationality, every creed, every color, every age, every belief system is going to be protected. It makes me nervous. Moving on. Then we've got Pluto and Mercury that are doing this thing where it's like making us realize that it's going to be so much bigger. It's not just foreign policy. This is a lot of a reflection of what's going on in the States, will be how we actually end up handling things, I think, in terms of our relation with other nations. If we take a look at Capricorn's ruler being Saturn, that in the 8th house is talking all about, once again, the illegal activity of immigration. So that tells me he's going to potentially do quite a bit in terms of immigration and creating a lot of issues in government, and actually making a lot of legal situations where he's either passing laws or creating things where people are actually breaking laws, or it may be affecting how we go about passing new laws that will only be happening to better benefit his views on immigration. Yikes, yikes, yikes. All right, so now we've got Jupiter involved in a T-square. And I was talking about this a second ago. This is one of the more not so hot aspects in astrology, where we're looking at the opposing Uranus and Jupiter in a very, very tight square with Pluto, which once again is suggesting that because of these things that he's doing, because of these things that he's passing, not only is it necessarily affecting the health, so to say, of our government and of how we're running our more local governments, but it could be the health of the relationships that we have with other countries. And I know I've said this a couple times, but that really seals the deal for me. I think it could also be talking about how it's affecting his health, so to say, as well. Jupiter opposition to Uranus won't be friendly. Interactions with agreed upon relations and negotiations may be broken. We look to the Aries energy, and Uranus being in the 12th house, unexpected military responses due to the Mars energy. However, within Uranus's placement, it's more so to do with the development of weapons. That's how I'm seeing this. And because then we backtrack and we look at what's going on with Aquarius, it's not necessarily like you guys would think like tanks and guns. I'm seeing this as being more so like scientific. This is like nuclear warfare. Okay, like it's in the chart. Jupiter also in the 6th house is magnifying health issues that Trump himself may be having. So perhaps maybe as some of these situations come to a head and as they become more dramatic, he's running the risk of having emotional issues. He's running the risk of having potential health issues in general. You know, if he did, I think a lot of it would be concealed. I don't think a lot of it would be opened up to the public. I don't honestly believe that he would want to come out with a lot of it. And I think that that's going to really play on what's going on with his moon. Now, Jupiter can also be seen as the great expansion. I mean, when you look at it, it will expand and magnify, and it can bring you many great things, but it also can just magnify to the point where it blows up and it brings us endings. It's almost like the holy death. So I'm seeing that with Jupiter being in some of these really tight squares in his 6th house, it can relate to an unexpected assassination. Now, this goes back to what I was saying when I talked about this eclipse that's happening conjunct also his Mars and his natal ascendant. That will not be happening until August of 2017. So we've got to get through the next 2 eclipses that we're going to be having in Leo, and I believe the other one is in Pisces, before we get there. So we've got some time. We're going to see some things play out. But I'm also looking, if we go a little bit further into some of the other eclipses, further, I mean, we're talking about the eclipses once they get into Capricorn and they're getting into Cancer. That will be happening in like 2020, 2021. We're going to be seeing more of an opportunity for some major eclipses that are going to be happening that will actually start bringing in Gemini that hit some personal points in his chart. Whether or not we get to that, we'll see. I mean, that's a ways away. But I do want to talk about that because it does suggest that while he is in between, you know, going from one term to another, if he does make it through the inauguration, if he does make it through what happens potentially and what goes on in August, will he make it through these other eclipses that are going to hit some major important parts in his chart? We don't know. So it does suggest that regardless of how long his term or terms, everybody's going to freak out when I say terms, are, I don't think that he would make it to complete his first term. That's my belief. But if he does, I do not believe he would go to a second term because you're going to see so many specific, I mean, within a couple degrees, eclipses hit major personal planets for him, as well as his own natal eclipse. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. All right. So going back to what I was saying, you know, the 12th house where we have Uranus in Aries, the 12th house has to do with assassinations. So Jupiter's placement in the 6th, putting a spotlight and opening up the whole top part of the chart, the whole, you know, top, what's seen, is putting that out there. And like, this isn't anything new. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, not really, but a lot of other people are talking about this. So I find it's interesting that everything that's coming through the astrology could also be suggesting that there's some stuff going on. Earlier, just for fun, although he's not my favorite person, I was looking through Trump's chart, and I was also looking at some of his progressed planets. And what I think is interesting is that there's a lot going on that's suggesting that this is a major pivotal point in his chart, and I'll pull that up in just a second. I think it has something to do with his sun. Let me see here. But a lot of it having to do with him actually having completed and seeing a lot of personal goals that are going on at this time that are, let's take a look here. Let's look at his progress chart. A lot of his own personal goals that are finally happening for him at this moment. So if I progress it to what's going on, I mean, right now, I mean, we're a couple of days away from the inauguration, but his progressed Saturn is at 2 degrees Leo, which is sitting right on his midheaven. So it's interesting because we're seeing so much going on that's about him sitting at a really high peak pinnacle of his career, of his prestige, so to say. And of course, it would be in Leo. But simultaneously of his progressed chart, his ascendant is 26 degrees Libra. To everybody who knows, Jupiter's in Libra, so this is a new year, so to say. Now, his won't be starting until later in the, I'm sorry, not later in the fall, but we've got a couple degrees before that happens. But he has all these other progressed planets that are like now crossing his ascendant. He's got Jupiter, but he also has Neptune, Mars, Venus, Chiron. I mean, all these other planets that are just chilling in his 12th house. Woo! Does that make me a little bit nervous? I mean, it's coming down to the wire. It's leaving things open where there are several windows where things could dramatically change, depending on the relationships that he has with other people and who he's working with or who he's potentially pissing off, so to say. But regardless of all of this, this is definitely something that is supposed to be happening for him at this time. He's supposed to have this place of being able to have some kind of controlled power or reign, okay? Whether you like him or not, it's happening. Let me go ahead and wipe his chart and get his chart off of here. I'd rather go back to the inauguration and talk more about that and where I was in that. Give me a second to scroll through my notes. So, getting back to where we were about, I talked about the squares and the Jupiter opposition. I do think that because he has already come out and made some comments and made some statements about his views on the nuclear warfare and about what he wants to do and controlling other people and trying to do his own thing, and it's just very bully energy, and I don't like those squares. I think that it's very possible that you're going to get some other countries or some other people that will challenge him, so to say, and it makes me a little bit nervous. Now, this is just some of the later stuff that I was looking at, getting into the eclipses of 2020. So I think that some of you guys may have been looking at the video that I did when I talked about Saturn going into Capricorn, which it will be later this year, and it will have about a 2.5–3 year reign, which everybody's kind of, I mean, at least in the astrological community, a lot of us are like, man, we can finally talk about this now. And I've been waiting for it. But we're going to see that the eclipses will start building in the next couple years through Capricorn and through Cancer. And I think that this is so significant because at least for, you know, the inaugurations chart, you're looking at this happening in the 9th house, triggering that Pluto and that Mercury. And it's also going to be triggering the 3rd house, which has to do with communications. And it has, I think, also has to do with relations. So it's going to get colorful. Then I started thinking to myself, okay, if he does make it, and if he does get through the first term, will he make it to a second term? And I started looking at the eclipses that were coming. Oh, man. So I look at sometimes the prenatal eclipses. And so the eclipses that happen, be that solar or lunar, just prior to being born. Well, when we get into 2020, 2021, there will be an eclipse on November 20th in Gemini that's conjunct his prenatal solar eclipse. What? That's crazy. I think that a lot of other people may look at this and the solar and the lunar eclipses, the prenatal eclipses coming back around, can be talking about potential death points. I'm not saying he has to, but it's possible. And then I go further into, there will then be a Sag solar eclipse that will be conjunct his moon opposing his sun December 14th. I'm not sure if that was 2020 or 2021. I actually think that that's going to be 2021. But those are two really big indications. Now, okay, we're in 2017. I think that that should be just going into the end of his term, potentially if he would be going for a second term. My opinion is, you know, even though that eclipse that he's going to be having that's roughly conjunct his Mars and his ascendant that will be happening over the summer could certainly be adding pressure to what's going on with him, but I think more so in terms of that 29 degrees Sagittarius, tense situations with how he's going about handling and dealing with his relations with other countries, but also in terms of foreign immigrants and anybody who he is creating a stir with, who he may have, you know, different beliefs in terms of religion or belief systems in general. my big thing is my money is going to be on these eclipses. So should he, in the very, and I don't even like saying this, should he make it through the term and not get impeached or not, decide to resign, which I personally, I don't think he would ever do that. But we have seen a lot of stuff that's been coming up. And I remember talking about just a month ago or a month and a half ago saying, Mercury's going to go retrograde in Capricorn. It's going to hit Pluto. So hold on, guys. We're going to see a lot more stuff that's going to come up in regards to things coming to the surface that has to do with his involvement with other countries or with Russia, or what happened with the election, which I got to say, I'm really quite taken back to see that even with all of the information that came out, he's very dismissive. And I mean, I guess he kind of has to be, although some sources do say that he kind of admitted it was possible, or maybe he wavered on that. I find it very interesting that not a lot came out about it, or not a lot was done on a more national level. I mean, we heard some people who were involved in terms of claiming that there were reports that came out or didn't come out. I mean, I'm not citing anything, because honestly, with the news right now, it's so hard to cite anything because everything's going to have its own perspective, and it's really hard to be able to get some valuable sources. But I do know that if it's coming up in a multitude of different media sources, something happened and it wasn't really discussed, or it wasn't really handled appropriately. And I think a lot of other people feel that way as well. However, we're going to have a bunch of planetary retrogrades that are going to be happening. I mean, I'm looking at a chart here between now and just the beginning of February. This is the really small point in time that we have where everything is now direct and moving forward. We're not in a retrograde. It's not going to last long. I mean, we're going to have a period of time where it looks like we will have a Jupiter, Saturn, briefly, a Venus, and a Neptune and a Pluto retrograde all at once. It's like, all of that stuff is going to be going backwards. We're going to see the opportunity once he gets into office, I think, where once all those planets start kind of rolling back, and they'll really start rolling back starting in February, but I'm seeing a lot of it kind of going on more so in like April to June, where everything is kind of being brought up to the surface, and some of the things that he has agreed to, or some of the topics he has agreed to handle, or people he has agreed to help or represent, he may be retracting some of those agreements, or he may be retracting some of his plans. And I think that he's going to want to finish up some projects, kind of get a hold on some things before he really starts moving forward on some stuff in the summer, which further supports, I believe, the eclipses that are going to be coming. So I'm hoping that we have the opportunity to do some more videos on some of this stuff. Like I said, I'm going to wait because I respect a lot of the other astrologers out there who are saying, you know what, until he takes his oath, until we have that time, I'm not going to do a chart. And I agree with that. And I think that it's important because a matter of seconds and minutes can play a difference. However, there's no arguing with some of these outer planets. Those aren't going to move a 15 or a 20-minute difference depending on who does or does not play at his inauguration, or who gives a speech or doesn't give a speech. It's not going to make a difference. But still, I want to have that. I want to have the time. I want to look at the chart, and I want to have the exact time, because I think that it's going to really help us put together the pieces in the puzzle. I think that regardless of what I think about him, my job is to not be biased, and so I'm really trying to just kind of give the facts. But I think that whomever would have come into this position kind of had their work cut out for them. I just think it's so fascinating that the eclipses really kind of land on some major pivotal points that are falling in suit with what will be happening, even just with the squares and Saturn's reign within looking at the chart of the inauguration. And the other thing is like, man, I didn't even get into, I didn't even put those two charts together, but I mean, sure, why not? Let's do that. We've got some time to kill. I'm going to go ahead and pull up Trump's natal chart. I don't want to look at his progress chart because I think he'll get a little full of himself. Let's take a look here. Okay, so back to Trump's chart, and then I'm going to go ahead and throw the inauguration over it. And I think that that's going to give me a little bit more of an idea of what's going to be happening. Actually, let me flip that around, because that's more so talking about how it affects him. I want to talk about how the country, and I guess something else I could have done is I could have looked at the chart for the states, but perhaps maybe that'll be another video. I would love to do that. But just looking at this right now, I have the synastry wheel up. I'm still seeing some major points, and it's like my eyes go bing. They go directly to the 6th house. The 6th house being Libra, and his natal Jupiter Chiron falls within a couple degrees of transiting Jupiter, which is huge, guys, because Jupiter is going to go retrograde. I'm like looking at this starting in February on the 5th. So certainly the health and the relations that he has with the people that he works with is very important. I think he's going to have to get in there and do some damage control if that's possible. I think that this is also a major, major indication that I'm seeing that there is going to be health issues with him as a result of taking this oath, taking this job. He's going to have to put his money where his mouth is. Then we've also got, the transiting, his natal moon in 21 degrees and the south node at 20 degrees, which is sitting in the 8th house of death, and it's Sagittarius. That is also conjunct 23 degrees Saturn. I mean, it's just like, I kind of look at that as like, it's a death wish. I also see that day, the descendant, his natal descendant being at 29 degrees of Aquarius. It's a stressful degree, isn't it? The transiting south node is a matter of a couple degrees away, which is also indicating that there could be people falling away from him, that he is not going to have the supportive groups that he thinks he may have, that there may be some cancellation, once again, in agreements. I love how this works. I'm also seeing that Jupiter, his natal Jupiter at 17 degrees, is in a 3-degree opposition to the 20-degree Uranus that's in the 12th, which is also saying that the health issues, that square, can be as a result of an unexpected military attack. So what if it's not an assassination? What if he's got these squares going on to the 8th house where we have Saturn, where we have his moon, which is emotional pressure because of the things that he is saying that he just, it's Sagittarius, it's Jupiter energy. It's just going to come out of his mouth. That is in the 8th house, Mars and Pluto. I don't care what you guys say, Mars and Pluto rule Scorpio. So, but it's this deep, it can be nasty. It can be really dark. It can be hurtful. It can be transformative. It's not good. I mean, he could say some things that could really disrupt, once again, in this chart, some groups that have foreign beliefs, that have other spiritual or religious beliefs, that could have military backing, that could affect his health and the health with other relationships in other countries, that could be sprung on him, that is then squaring his sun and his north node, his position of power and self-worth. I think you're going to see people who are going to come in and they're going to beat him up. And I think that you're going to see that, although it may not be an immediate thing where he leaves, what's going to happen is they're going to be aiming to really take him down more so on an emotional level. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to emotionally mess with him. I think that you're going to kind of see him be still a bit of a bully. I think that you're still going to see, once again, with that, his natal Mercury, which in Cancer, it's like, really? Seriously? But that being in the 3rd house, also with Saturn and Venus, does indicate that he will still be having negotiations. He may still be having conversations in a hidden realm. He's not, because it's Cancer, he's not wanting to be outwardly about it. This is all opposing Pluto and Mercury in the 9th house of the inauguration in Capricorn. He's hiding. He's hiding behind the people he's aligning in government. He's hiding behind the changes that he's making within our court system, within the house, within everything, who he's bringing in, and he's going to have other people carry out his deeds, his views. I don't know. Probably going to get a lot of slack about this video, but I really don't care. This was really more so something I just wanted to do. I wanted to bring up some of these topics. I wanted to show you guys how interesting and how predictive potentially we'll see astrology can be, how important it is to pay attention. I know I'm going to be following this. I know that, you know, his chart is now going to have a special little icon on my desktop because I certainly I'm very interested. I'm not going to say I'm excited. I'm interested to see how these things play out. And I know that there's so many other people who are talking about this. So do get perspective. It's important to get perspective. You know, look at other astrologers, talk to other people. But I think that we're going to see things dramatically change, which we already know. But this paints a very different picture of him for me. It certainly puts him in a very different light. And it makes me realize that if so many of the changes are coming from him literally gutting out and making massive changes to what's going on with the government and with a lot of the systems, I think therein lies the issue, is that he's not necessarily using or utilizing his power in the best way. He's doing it his way, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's right for the people. And I'm seeing this with the squares happening to this massive stellium that we're having in the 11th house that is Pisces for the inauguration. However, it also is still Aquarius's house. So it has to do with everyone. It has to do with groups. It has to do with what's honorable. And I think that also speaks to, affects the house of, you know, honors and awards or wishes or belonging to parts of groups. Makes me really kind of like, is this a good idea? I mean, we've got Neptune there, we've got a lot of other planets there that are suggesting that the people that he is bringing together to help restructure our country, they're actually going to dissolve it. I mean, with those squares that are going on, especially, I mean, you've got a relatively loose square between Neptune and a couple planets that we're having, but still, it suggests that there could be some illusions going on. Like I said, smoke and mirrors, some particularly shady or questionable characters who are coming in who may not necessarily be who they say they are or not be qualified to help us make these changes. Now, that's up for you guys to decide. I think that I want to end this on a positive note, and do say that if anything comes of this, I think that it's showing us that the ability to come together and band together, and there will be strength in numbers from some of these groups who feel oppressed and have blatantly been oppressed in the media for some time, not just in our country, but just in general for the history of civilization. We're going to be seeing that racial matters and immigration issues are going to be huge in this. And so what I see as the potential, still the positive, I want to see the positive. You know, the Venus, Chiron, Mars still in Aquarius is also still saying that through the tense things that are going on with those squares to Saturn, that if we can come together and love and cut through the crap and cut through the stuff that's not real and call people on stuff and listen and support the press and support who is going to be highlighting this and taking our stories of what's going on in our local government and talking about it and taking it to people and making it known, we have the ability to really shine a light on what goes wrong. And we've known this is happening with Pluto in Capricorn, with Saturn approaching, and it's going to get really colorful in 2020. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. Go see what I was talking about. And it's all kind of starting to come together where you really have to see the rise and fall of an empire to rebuild. So if you do have Saturn in Sagittarius, I thank you for bringing these topics up. If you have Saturn in Capricorn, we have a huge mess to pick up. We have a political system and a government system and relationships. I mean, I'm not saying forget the government, but what about the relationships that we have with each other, with mankind, with other countries? And we're seeing also that this chart is a representation of the collective consciousness at that day. That's some really tense, emotional, spiritual, government-related feelings, things changing. So what can you guys do? Other than raise awareness, hold space, hold space for each other, support each other. Remember that everybody's doing this together. Remember that we have to go through this to get to the other side, to be able to rebuild. Pray, which way that may be, if that's being positive, if that's mantras, if that's supporting each other verbally, energetically, emotionally, for whatever you believe in, whatever that may be, and holding space so we can really help with this shift and help with this transition. I think that with everything that's going on with that Venus, with that Chiron, we're having to see it fall, but we're also having the ability to rebuild the structure in much more harmonious, much more environmentally and spiritually friendly terms. And so guess what, guys? It's gonna get a little ugly. I will be looking at the comments. I'm expecting some drama, and that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I want to see what you guys think. I appreciate for you guys being here, for listening, for tuning in. It's kind of a midday here for me in California, but for listening and for being supportive. And I'll be looking to see what you guys have. I might chime in, and certainly look forward to doing some more videos for you guys in the next couple of months about some of these topics, but also what's going on with the lunar cycles. So I'll be back doing the new moon and the full moon stuff here soon. If you want to book a personal reading with me, you may do so at astrology.com. And once again, my name is Candace. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon.